everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Back to School, Back to Business. I'm very honored to be the chair of WII. I'm Margaret Ressi Melkend, and I will tell you all, you are in for a treat. This is our very first back by popular demand. You asked for it, and the band is back together. We have a tremendous panel of leaders moderated today by our fearless one, Laura Deutscher. And we are going to be talking about what I like to think about the reset that is back to school. For me, in this time of change and growth and refreshing, I'm taking this moment to reset. Reset my goals, reset my dreams, and get ready. We don't have to wait to January 1st to do that. That's the beauty of the back to school vibe, the feeling, the head and the heart emotions that we all have when we think of this time of year. So, with much gratitude, I say thank you to our inspiring leaders who make a difference in insurance and in our community. I'll remind you all this is a safe place. It's a safe place to celebrate, to learn, to support each other, to have a bit of fun, maybe shed a tear. This is our time. This is our place. And I celebrate all of you for making the time for yourselves to immerse and to do this. So, with that said, I'll let Laura introduce the rock stars, but I get to introduce her. Laura, thank you for your energy. Thank you for your joy. Thank you for your challenge. You make us better every day here at WII. And I was so excited to be able to say that today. So, over to you, fearless one.
Thank you, Margaret, and welcome to everyone. I'm excited to be back here again with everybody and to have these amazing panelists join me. It's hard to believe that it was Mother's Day, May, when we did the first one, and as Margaret said, back by popular demand. We didn't get all the questions answered. We had follow-up questions, and here we are again today with another 100 people registered to talk openly and candidly about how do working parents figure it out. I'm thrilled that all the familiar faces are back. We were talking beforehand about they all signed up for an hour webinar in May, and here they are again. So I appreciate the time of our panelists. And if you were with us on the first call, you're going to find out it's just going to be a very unscripted, natural conversation on what it's like to be a caregiver and working parents in insurance. We have tagged it on to back to school. And as Margaret said, a lot of times that's a reset period for us as we get our activities back into the stream of normal work time frames and so forth, and get our kids back to school or other parenting responsibilities set up for success. And it's also a refresh time as us as individuals. I used to love the back to school activities of, new papers and pencils, and it's way more involved than that now. But we're still here as a community to kind of help us through those changes. So a few housekeeping items. This is meant to be a conversation that includes all of you. So here's what to expect. We will be using the chat feature to share ideas and resources as we go on. So keep your eyes on that. Take a moment to introduce yourself, where you're from, why you're here. We'll also use the Q&A function, so I will do my best to try and monitor the questions that are coming in and weave those into our conversation. So feel free to ask any questions anytime along the way, and we'll work to get those addressed. I'm thrilled to have my three friends here, Jamila, Leslie, and Naomi. Thank you so much for being back here together with me today. And we're going to start all with a brief introduction of ourselves, and then we'll get into the conversation. So, Jamila, if you want to start, and we can take the
Yes, thank you.
slides down, Kylie, and we have a few other slides. We'll get back to those, I promise.
Great. Thanks so much, Laura, and thank you, Margaret, for your inspiring words. I made some notes as you kicked off. I love the word of reset, but also your comment about the head and heart emotions of back to school as we refresh. I'm Jamala Arland. I'm president and CEO of the U.S. Life Businesses at Genworth. I'm a mother of two, and I wanted to acknowledge as we have this conversation that there are parents whose kids are missing as we restart this school year, whether it's the reality of childhood illnesses or childhood death. For me or for my family, my first son would have started kindergarten this year, um, and we hold a space for him in our heart, and just extending that to other families as well who are dealing with both the situation of maybe having a child at school, and a child that they just continue to hold in their heart or that they care for at home due to illness.
Thank you so much, Jamila. And it's one of the things we talked about was we're all coming from a different place. We all have different experiences and what we're dealing with, and that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind um, as we go through life, and how can we support each other through those different stages. So, Leslie, do you want to share something as an opening comment?
Sure. Yes, thank you. I'm so excited. It was so much fun the last time. And Margaret, always with the reminder to stay positive and look for ways to reframe. So thank you for that as well. Um, I would say, so I've been in the insurance industry for 30 years. I really appreciated in the beginning of the school year how the new relationships with the teachers, how to establish yourself going forward, how the schedules, how to manage your schedules, getting everybody organized. It is not easy, but I would advise that you should not take it on all by yourself. I did silly things like I never shopped for those school supplies. I bought the box. I did not take on any additional responsibilities that I did not need to. And it certainly helps, but you really have a chance at this time to help your kids learn how to take on accountability versus taking it on yourself. So, our job is to create independent human beings, and that is my advice. And don't forget, even when they're little, they need to find ways to be independent, whether it's dressing themselves or going through their supplies and organizing their backpack, and maybe even forgetting something. And so what? But that's my opening comment for back to school.
I love that. This weekend, I had the great opportunity to babysit two of my grandsons. And the oldest one is 3. He'll be 4 next month. And he has a soccer game. And he goes, I can get myself dressed. I'm like, oh, sure you can. You got the cleats and you got the whole thing. And he went upstairs and he actually did it. I
Yeah.
mean, he came downstairs and his socks are on with his shin guards in there. And I'm like, I would have just gone and helped him versus I can do this. And, that made getting out that door, because he has a 2-year-old brother, way easier. So totally great advice, and leaning on others and letting them grow to be independent. So appreciate that. Naomi, would you like to introduce yourself and share an opening comment?
Absolutely. And I echo that I'm thrilled to be back. So thanks for including us again, and thanks for everybody joining in. I would say just two very quick things. One, Laura, you reminded me the fun of buying something new at this point. I was back when we had trapper keepers. So I don't know if there's anybody online that had trapper keepers. I just feel like we should all go buy something. Yeah, great. We should all go buy something new for ourselves for this reset. And then I just want to acknowledge Jamala. I think she just did what we should all model, and that's really being open. Margaret set up nicely with the head and the heart. It's okay to lead with the heart. And I think more times than not, we try to hide that part of us, and maybe more as women because we see that as a weakness. It's not, it's a strength. And so, Jamal, I just want to commend you for leading us all the right way and leading with your heart. And I would encourage us, all of us, to do more of that, especially in these seasons where, not making assumptions that people wouldn't care and wouldn't want to. Someone just said something about a village, wouldn't want to have that village around all of us. We make those assumptions, I think. So that would be my opening.
I totally agree. And how can you leave your heart at home, or how can you leave your heart not in the situation? And it makes you it makes it hard. You can't be your authentic self. And we're humans first, right? And then we just happen to work in our roles and work in our jobs and so forth. So I really appreciate that. I'm actually ask you, Kylie, to put up the picture of my grandson, because that was going to be my opening comment. I have, this is a different grandson. It's the one is keeping it real. And it was meant to, if you can put that up, Kylie, keeping it real. So, my daughter, this is my oldest daughter's youngest son, and he was 11 months last Thursday, and I was talking to her about this panel. And it's interesting to watch your daughter go through parenting. She still works. She has the great flexibility that she can bring her son to work. So this is her son at the office with her. She on his 11th month birthday. And you know how you on Instagram you have all these, they're all in their cute little outfits with their little things that says 11 months, and it's all perfect. And I said, send me this picture, because this is real life. She's trying to finish something on, online or whatever, and he crawls into the garbage can. So this is kind of a setup of, we need to keep it real. Everything doesn't look perfect as we want it to seem. So this we'll continue into the conversation about keeping it real, but this is Austin on his 11th month birthday. So there you go. You can take it back down, Kylie. Thank you. Appreciate you letting me do that, but it just was so real to me. It's like this is reality. So let's get into some more conversation. Um, we're going to start with realities, keeping it real. There we go, and trade-offs. And I'm going to put Leslie you on spot for an invisible task that you carry as a working parent that impacts you in your professional life. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. And I'll just start by, I just want to make one comment about your introduction with Austin, which is so adorable. There's no such thing as perfect. I try to remind everybody that I mentor and coach there is no such thing as perfect. Perfect is by definition non-existent. It's in your head. And so 80%, anything you do, 80% is good enough, because it's going to be reworked. So I just throw that out there. There's no such thing. So we need to stop holding ourselves to these standards that don't exist. There's a lot of invisible stuff that women take on, particularly, and I think parents take on when they're working. And as you said earlier, we're trying to create more reality. I think a lot of times we do, as Naomi pointed out, we hide. One of the main things is obviously all of the logistics of a household. I think there's this great book. It's called Invisible Women. I don't know how many people have looked at this book, but it's basically a statistical book around how the world, the environment is created more for men than it is for women. And so sometimes we take all of these things on, and it's harder for us. The world can sometimes be harder. So how do we get past that? I'll say, managing all of the appointments, managing all the things that you have to leave work for, that you might have to remember to do, the follow-up appointments, or whether or not it's picking someone up sick from school, or making sure that there's a babysitter in place when you have to be late for work or traveling, or manage the dogs, or manage your own, all of those things around the household. Those are invisible things that I think women, at least myself, I took on. And the thing that helped me was finding my village, talking through, and getting tips from other people. And one of the things that I did was I had this great mentor who had shared with me about how she utilized her nanny. And her kids were older, and she actually kept her nanny because it became such a, human being that could connect and help and really do a lot of the lifting. Things like using them to buy birthday presents, to iron clothes, to do shopping, to do all of these things that, so lifting other places, letting people help you. But the invisible stuff you take on, asking for flexibility, being transparent, and using the people that have been through it before.
So I have one follow-up question, and maybe it's to everybody, but what makes us, because I think we do this to ourselves, or at least I did it to myself, feel I need to take on all those logistics? It's just seemed like it naturally happened. Oh, I'm going to make the doctor's appointments and I'm going to coordinate the carpool. And it wasn't like my husband was saying, well, no, I won't do it or couldn't do it. So there's something innate in us.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we always take care of others before ourselves. It's like this genetic DNA. But then I also point out to that book, the environment, the social structure that we have in place, it does enable for women to do that more. And the more we can educate men, the more we can educate human beings that understand what it's like to take care of children when they're really young. I love the, family leave, the parental leave policies that are showing up. We didn't have that. So we didn't have a lot of the men taking time off to spend time with the children and understand what it's like to run the household. And they wouldn't automatically do it. And then we wouldn't automatically ask them. So I don't know, Laura, I guess I probably not a perfect answer, but I think it's about education and why do we do this to ourselves? I have no idea.
I agree. Just to add on, and it's a constant challenge, right? I'll give you a recent example. I'm on the other end of the parenting, but now I have an elder father that has moved to nearby that I'm a caretaker in a different way now. And just recently, I was having a moment one evening about I'm not sure I'm going to do this. I was talking to my husband about it. I got work demands right now, and I take that very seriously. And I don't know how to get dad to his appointments, and I don't know how to. And I was having this like moment. I'll just call it a moment. And he looked at me and he said, "I can take your dad to appointments." Never even dawned on me to ask him, and it wasn't because he wouldn't do it. He's now, in
Right.
fact, he's taken to a dentist appointment a couple hours here. It's just that constant checking in on like, you don't have to do it all. I don't know why we do it to ourselves. I don't know if society, tells us we have to, but constantly checking in on ourselves on someone else can help. It's nothing magical about us having to do it all.
Think similar to the book you referenced, Leslie, Invisible Woman, and this one has more of a comedic tilt. It's called How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids by Jancy Dunn. And I picked it up and I read it. And there's an example that she uses in the narrative where she talks about, the hunter-gatherer days where, women took care of everything at base camp. Men had the single responsibility of hunting, and bringing home the food. And now we're in this space where as women in the workforce, we are also going out and effectively doing that hunting and gathering, right? While also taking care of the camp. So I agree with you guys, like maybe there is a little bit of that innate nurture thing that we continue to hold on to, even as we also play and share a role in bringing home the bacon. That in the book, what she talks about is really how we shift from unspoken expectations to setting expectations of what is that balance that's needed in the house in the household, so that to your point, Naomi, like your husband can help with your dad too, it's like, how do you kind of have that delegation at home that we're experts at in the office, and really kind of strive that balance in all aspects of our lives.
So we need to, and Naomi, your husband's like, well, I can do that. So we need to remember that. But we also need to call each other on it, saying you don't have to do that. And this is part of the village community part of, setting boundaries, asking for help. You don't have to do everything yourself. I know when I was, well, probably my entire life, I was going to say when I was a young parent, time was a way more scarce resource than anything else. And so, trying to manage my time, but having someone hold that mirror in front of you and say, wait, you don't have to do this, or you don't have to do this now, or you don't have to do this to perfection, the 80%, let it go. let it go. So all great ideas. And that was one question. So here we are. We've only had one question and it's 20 minutes after the hour, but this is kind of how it goes, folks, if you didn't watch the last time. So
You're not
um,
perfect.
so the next question is how has your parenting or caregiving um, made you a better leader? Excuse me. And how has it challenged your path? And I'm going to go to Naomi first, and then I'll kick it over to you, Jamila.
Yeah, I love this question. I remember it coming up last time, and we didn't get to it a lot because I do think sometimes we end up focusing a lot on the challenges part of it. And being a caregiver and having that innate, even though it can be difficult at times, it's good, right? I think all the articles that I read these days and have been for a while on empathy. Empathy as a leader is one of those things, and as a colleague is one of those things that is super, super important. And we had to practice that every day with our kids, right? And now parents and everybody else we take care of. And then I think the other one that I rely on a lot is adaptability. I shared for those of you that were on the first go around, I was a single parent for 12 years and stuff happened and I didn't have a village at that point to call for help. So I just adapted. We just figured it out as we went. And having that skill now to just figure it out as we go is a really, really very useful skill.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jamila, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, Laura, I think about the picture that you shared of Austin, and um, what came to mind was crisis management. So there, your daughter is trying to do her work while managing that crisis. And in some ways, that picture um, is also a representation sometimes of what it's like at work. So the skills that you learn as you're taking care of kids, heads in the trash can, picking things off the ground and stuffing in their mouth, there's always those little crises that, that you learn to manage and also let go. I remember like when my son was young and I just had this idea, there's just no way he's ever going to eat things off the floor. And wouldn't it be sure that yesterday we were at a baseball game, he dropped his lollipop. My husband picked it up off the ground at the baseball stadium, threw some water on it, and stuck that lollipop back in his mouth because that is how we were going to survive the rest of that game to be able to enjoy it, right? And so we make those trade-offs when we're actually in those realities and we learn how to balance. I think we use the word of perfection versus reality and what is the most important thing in that moment. And quite frankly, all the germs that he's exposed to, that lollipop probably wasn't the worst thing he's put in his mouth this week. My son's 3. So just that parallel between the head in the trash can picture of Austin and sometimes the things that we're facing every day in the workplace and making those trade-offs and those prioritization and letting go perfection moments are things that I think are skills that we can bring into the workplace and we should bring into the workplace more because those head and trash can moments, they're always there, whether it's prioritization, delegation, time management, crisis management, all of those things are, by fire you learn as parents and similarly by fire you learn as leaders and in the workforce.
Absolutely. You're nothing on the floor. I mean, I think about probably first time parents, you're like sanitizing everything and you've got special soap to wash the bottles. Now we didn't have that when I was, and then you've got a sterilizer thing. And then the second kid, you're like, oh yeah, sure. Here's your pass. Eat was on the ground. Pick it up, stick, lick it
Lick
off
it
and
off.
Sit on it if you have
Exactly.
to.
so,
And clean.
exactly. I think one of the biggest things on what it taught me is multitasking. You can't single thread anything when you're trying to balance, it's not just work, it's work and human beings, and human beings could be babies or they could be, parents or so forth. And then you've got all the different activities. It's not just your work calendar. So the capacity to execute, I think in my world grew significantly. Um, but we'll get to this in a second. The self-care is where it went away. So make sure we talk about self-care, but I'm going to go to a different question. So this is to Naomi and Leslie. And so how do we address challenges and opportunities that come with taking care of older teens, college age kids? We touched on this a little bit in the last one as well. We've already touched on this a little as well as elderly parents and family. So how do we, Leslie, if you want to go first, how can we address challenges of, we talk about little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. Is kind of part of the thing we talked about last time. So
Yes, and little kids are physically exhausting, right? So you have this when your kids are young, it's physical. You are tired all the time. There's not enough minutes in the day to complete everything you need to complete. And as they grow up, it becomes more mentally challenging, which is also physically affecting you in some way. I would say for me, learning self-care was hugely important, even to address my own children's needs, and finding ways to understand that meditation is really helpful for your brain and calm and stress. And I started taking baths with Epsom salts to sort of replenish my cortisol or my magnesium to get my cortisol levels in check. I mean, I started doing things that I had to exercise on a regular basis these days a week. Those things became important for me to combat the mental part of taking care of older kids, which I've experienced to be super stressful, some of the most stressful times in my life, and also some of the biggest parts of my growth as a human being, because all of that accountability that we take on, or making sure that they are doing all the right things and getting everything right the way that you would have expected them to do it, is actually taking away from yourself, and it's a lot of mental capacity to control your kids. And I use that word because oftentimes what I had to learn to do is, well, why do I care if he wakes up on time? Okay, I want him to go to class. Well, why do I care if he goes to class on time? Well, I want him to get good grades. Why do I care if he gets good grades? Well, I want him to get into a good college. Why do I care if he goes to college? Well, I want to be, I want him to have success. Well, why do I care about that? Because I want to be a good parent. Okay, so now it's about me. Why can't I solve for me in a different way than making sure that he is getting up on time? And if he really wants to, he will. And if he doesn't, he won't. And so I know that it's really hard. This is like a skill that, just thinking about where are you trying to control your kids as they become young and you're used to taking on. And I go back to the very first thing is our job is to create independence and a safe place for them when they fail. So don't take on all of that stress. So manage your own stress so that you can have the right conversations and create the right environment for them to also fail and learn. And I think that for me has been a growth challenge. I know it's easy to say these things. It's very, very difficult to do.
I
And
say it's
hold
really,
yourself
really
back.
hard, really, really hard, but yeah.
But that is, and it really goes the same with elderly parents. Nobody wants to be told what to do, and that's control. Nobody, even my memory caretaking mother-in-law, doesn't want to be told when she needs to get dressed. It's a question, right? It's instead is, well, would you like to go outside today? Yes. Okay, great. If you want to go outside, I think you have to get dressed. Okay, I'm going to get dressed now. Perfect. Let's do that. It's just a reframing of how do you actually, not to try to control, but if she doesn't want to go outside, then she really doesn't need to get dressed. Stay in your pajamas and lay in bed. So that's kind of that would be my best opportunity to learn and get through the challenges.
Got it. Naomi, do you want to share? Thank you so much, Leslie.
Yeah, I first of all, you're my hero, Leslie, because even thinking about meditating stresses me out. So wait, I'll get that down. And I couldn't take a bath if someone forced me to. I think a couple ways is exactly what we're doing right now, is just being open about some of the stressors and the challenges, having more ways to have more conversations, whether it's groups like this, whether it's safe space at work, whether it's a lunch conversation, whatever it is, to be able to give people opportunity to talk about, right? And then find ways to support them. Flexibility, someone mentioned it earlier, like the more as employers we can be flexible, especially for those people that have earned it. And that's probably not the super popular way to say it, but if you've got folks that you know for the long haul have been good performers, are always going to be good performers, and they're a season in life where they just need some extra love and care, find a way to give them that extra love and care. If it's a moment in life, I have a good example of a colleague of mine. Last year, it was the first year that her daughter was staying home after school, alone, not going to an after school program. So she changed her schedule. She would come into the office early. She would kick butt all day. She would go home so that she could make sure her daughter was home and in the house off the bus, because that was all new. And then she'd dial in and finish her day from home. Perfect, right? It worked for us. It worked for her. It was better. And she's now even a more committed employee than she was before. So finding ways for that flexibility, finding ways to have the conversations, and then access to resources. Just last quick story, I mentioned my dad trying to find ways to take care of him. He just turned 99, by the way, just a
Oh, wow. Congrats.
um, he had to change insurances. I had no idea how to think about changing to another Medicare Advantage. I didn't know where to start. Well, we have at work a program called Health Advocate, probably the most underutilized program we have. I called them and said, here's the situation. What can you do to help me? They did all the research. They sent me a 10-page summary of here's the plans that he's eligible for based on the medications he's taking. Here's what, we think the best medication coverage is. Here's what for the doctors he sees. Here's the best plan. It saved me hours and hours of something that I would have had to do myself. That is a free benefit I get from work that I just had to take advantage of.
It's amazing what those resources, because you could spend days and days trying to figure out different things.
Yeah.
And those resources are just simple, not simple. They're readily available, and you can make them available to your employee base. I want to double down on the flexibility. We're all watching the return to the office requirements of certain days. And I think, Leslie, it was you at the beginning that talked about some of the structural societal things that don't really support working parents. And giving someone an extra half hour to go be able to be home to meet her daughter at the bus when she's making that transition for that short period of time seems like such a no-brainer to me. Like, I literally think about, why would you? This is a professional who's working hard. She's not, like, punching a clock in and out. There are jobs like brain surgery you can't do from home,
Yeah.
but most of our jobs we can do and flexible. And in my past, long before work from home and flexibility was a thing, I had someone who had 4 children, 2 young children, was the hardest worker I'd ever seen, but she just needed to be home parts of the time. It actually got kind of concerning because she'd be working, I'd getting stuff at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we didn't have a program. There was no work from home, but she and I had a deal because I'm like, I want to help you get through being this season of life as with young children and so forth. And it worked. And 40 years later, we're we're still friends. I still respect her. I talk to her all the time. And it was just like, someone needed to help her out a little bit to get through that short period of time. And she was working so hard. But someone, if there was a program that said, no, you're not allowed to work from your house, da, 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 I mean, it's just foolish. I don't even understand it. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry about that. But I agree, the flexibility and the different programs and the self-care. So Naomi, I do my gratitude journal. 5 minutes, 5 minute plug here, plug for the 5 minute gratitude
Oh,
journal.
I totally get that. Yeah.
I meditate. It's a practice. Sometimes my brain is going 100 miles an hour, but I needed to do that to help me. So just give it a try. Give it a try.
I'll keep trying. We're all works in progress.
Yeah, exactly. Jamla, do you have any? You started to say something. Do you want to jump in on this, or?
No, I did that journal last year. It's really good. That reflection at the beginning of the day and the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Now, I was just thinking about the conversation and some things that both Naomi and Leslie said. And I think about, just thinking about stigmas and what hold us back from flexibility. And in some ways, I think maybe it goes to that control lane that Leslie was going down, and where we try to have control. I think about the control that we have with our kids when they're young versus when they're older, and how that shifts over time as we're caring for parents. In my case, I'm caregiving for my grandfather, who we just moved to Richmond, who's 90. It's a different scenario, right? When you're caring for an adult who has agency, and in that case, there's a bit of a role reversal and maybe an inherent loss when you start caring for your parents, versus how we think about our teams, our employees, the associates that we work with. You know, these are adults with agency who are professionals. And I think in some ways, like the fear of flexibility is to where Naomi went, that people will abuse these systems of flexibility and these time off benefits. So how do we kind of think about just that idea of people have earned the right to have this flexibility, and instill that in the conversations that we have, both with the transparency, because when I think about, you know, where we started, of that authenticity of showing your whole self and bringing your whole self to work. Like that's a conversation that we've been having for years. And it's not just about protected classes, but it's about the things that we're going through on a day-to-day basis that impact who we are as professionals, and the space that we need, and the empathy and compassion that we need from each other. But when we do that, when we authentically bring our whole selves to work and share our stories, that creates space for other people in the office to say, you know, I'm having that experience, or to have that conversation with you, Naomi, to say, you know, I need that 30 minutes so I can be home with my daughter. And then you get more committed employees because you are acknowledging their humanity and creating space for them, for all the components of their lives. There's so much, people are so much more committed to an employer who is willing to be flexible and acknowledge the space that they need to be a human.
I 100% agree. And a couple of things that you said there. One, there might be people who abuse the flexibility. Well, that's a performance problem, and you deal like
Mhm.
with that with like any other performance
Exactly.
problem. So don't take away from everybody else for the couple of people who maybe have not earned the right or unearned the right to have that
Yeah.
flexibility. And we need to teach managers, continue to teach managers and leaders how to manage performance issues. That would just be a different one. So don't let that um, um, get in the way of giving flexibility to others. The statistics, which we haven't done a lot of statistics in this round, they prove that you will have more engaged employees who will be more productive and treat your customers and their fellow team members better. And it's just a proven fact. So there, I could pull up the data, but I don't have it at my fingertips. But we can send it if we want. It's there. Just trust me, as a data head person. And then the other thing you said on the role modeling, one of the companies I work with, the CEO of the company has a 3-year-old, and he is a role model. He goes, I have go home and I have dinner with my family and put him to bed. And do you know the message that sends to the rest of the organization, that it's okay to do that? So I think that's in the mix too, of role modeling as leaders of, do as I say, and I'm going to do as I say, versus that saying, do as I say, not as I do.
What I do. Yep.
Yeah. So, going to the soccer game, or yes, you're going to come in a little bit later because you're taking your child to the doctor, or you're taking your father to his dentist appointments or whatever, and making that okay. And back to the parental leave, I think that's the other thing is, have people have parental leave now or family leave, and some people aren't taking it because there's a stigma of taking it. I think that might be the biggest thing to change things is, no, actually parents are going to take the leave because it's important for the family. It's important for their own well-being. They'll be better employees, and it's a benefit, and it's meant to be taken. So role modeling that. So those are my, emphasis points on the things you all just said. So.
And Laura, if you don't mind, I know I'm going to jump a little bit to one or the other, but this is about how do you create that culture, right?
Yeah.
So it's beyond the policies. It's really more creating culture. And a couple of things that I have done and taught other leaders and managers to do. One is when you have a team, you do a team norm session. And this was a good way to sort of say, hey, I come in around this time. Please don't bother me during lunch. I really like to walk, or if anybody wants to come with me, please come. I would do things like, I have back issues and I'm going to leave every Monday at 4 o'clock for my chiropractor. So don't schedule anything after that. Or I have to pick up my kid on this day, or we have to go to these soccer games. I'll be on the calls, but I am going to be at the game and I'll mute myself. So saying those things out loud and trying to create that environment that makes it safe for others to also lay out their habits. This is how I work. This is what you can get the best out of me. It means, and then also when I would have team huddles, I would ask people, not every time, but sometimes, how are you feeling today on a scale of 1 being the worst and 10 being the best? And what I found is that as you ask that question of people and then you answer it yourself, you are role modeling what it's like to say, I had a really bad day. My mom found out she has this, this sickness, and I'm really worried about her. And people will the village will come together and support. Hey, is there anything I can take off your plate? I know you have that thing due tomorrow. And so those things are well beyond the policies, but it does create that environment where people feel safe. And it also allows you as a leader, as a manager, to speak up and have those conversations, revealing what your truth is.
Yeah, Leslie, I just want a quick add to that. We are doing culture workshops right now. We're a fairly new organization, so we're rolling out these culture workshops. And one of the things that we have in there is it's called the mood elevator. And so we've given this visual to everybody, and it's becoming a way to talk to it. So I'll go to my leader, who's the CEO, some days and say, hey, my mood elevator is really low today. This might not be the best day for that conversation. Can we reschedule that tomorrow? To give that space to be like, I'm just having a bad day. Can we do this another day? Or just at least know that my mood elevator's low, and while I'm trying to get it up, I'm human, and that's just going to happen someday.
And I bet the first thing they're going to do is try to ask you how they can help you.
Often,
right?
Yeah, often.
It's an opening to asking for help in a way as well.
Yes.
We've been having similar conversations too around the theme of psychological safety, which is, that freedom and that comfort to be able to raise your hand and say that there's a problem. And I think when you create those spaces where people can say, like the example that you raised, Leslie, my mom's not well and that's impacting me today. That same type of culture creates a space for someone to say, we have an issue in our financials that we need to rectify and remediate before reporting, or there's this problem with launch that we need to get in front of. It creates that same space where people are willing to say we have problems, and that then we can work together to correct them. That it's that marriage of when you have the right culture, it leads to that productivity as well. Because sometimes people worry like, well, it's so touchy-feely. You just spend a whole bunch of time in your staff meeting talking about feelings. Well, when you talk about feelings, that creates a space and the energy for people to say, we have a problem in production, guys. We need to all get behind that and solve those issues.
It's the open dialogue that allows for the open dialogue on life, human life and work life. So you want to create that space where people feel that they can raise personal or professional issues that are going on that then you can hopefully solve together. So,
and I'm just going to add on one more thing based on one of the questions about managing flexibility up. I always have kind of this open door policy, like anybody that wants to join my huddle can, and on a regular basis, at least a quarterly basis, I would invite my leader to join one of my team huddles where they could express in front of. So trying to create that culture with my leader as well to show, hey, this is how we operate as a team, and to not, to maybe push expectations, like this is how I also want to be treated. And so the more we can do that up through the organizations to share our ways, and encourage them, hey, what did you think after in the one-on-one? How did you think that went? Did you notice that so-and-so talked about this situation with his kids, and So therefore, you're not going to get that report. We pushed it to next week. I hope that's okay with you. You know, just again, creating that human interaction, but trying to demonstrate to leaders of all levels that, hey, what you're doing is also role modeling for them and might influence them in a different way. Because we don't all do it the same, but you know, sharing and asking for input and raising it not just through your teams, but also up is also helpful.
We have a question that relates to this a little bit, so we'll dive in a little bit deeper. But Jennifer Shepard asked, how can we manage the flexibility message up? I find at my level, many of us manage flexibility well, but as you get higher up in the organization, they don't understand. So how do we manage up? So you're all sitting at the top of your organization. So insights on that. How do we get the message up on flexibility and related items? Who wants
I
to go
would say to
first?
Jennifer, you know, depending on what the culture is in your organization, you give some highlights towards that, then maybe there's a lack of understanding of how you're managing flexibility at your level. I think when you bring ideas with results and solutions, it's hard to ignore that. And it sounds as though you have modeled something, you have results, and you can make a recommendation. I would frame it that way. And then in that scenario, you're not necessarily directly coming with an ask. You're coming with something that's proven, and you're talking about how do we implement this broader. And maybe that's a way to frame it. Here's something that I've done that's worked. Here are the results. I want to talk about how we implement this broader across the team.
Yeah, I think the yes and to that is finding a way to speak that person's language, right? So how you did it earlier, Jamala, on yes, I need flexibility to take care of my child, to do whatever. And I believe this ties back to making sure that product launch, you know, is right, making sure. So finding a way to tie it back to that person's language is a really good way. I'm sure there's an advocate somewhere in your organization that can help you with that, or send this recording to them.
I also think there's ways to, unless they want to hear from you on this as well, but I don't think people, I don't think sometimes it's intentional. They just don't get it because it's not been their lived experience. And I remember saying to Bob Paul, I'm sure he's not listening to this, but he was the partner at Cooper's a million years ago. And he was talking to me about something. And I literally said, I don't have a wife at home. And that was not a derogatory comment about wives, because I think the parent at home is actually might be more challenging than going to work all day. But it was a concept of, you don't understand. I have to go take care of this after all of this whole day of work. And it was dark out. We'd probably been there 12 hours. And I'm like, there's no one else to do this in my world. And it was like this aha moment to him. I'm like, oh God. So, but it wasn't his lived experience. And that could be in any ways. It could be, I've never been a parent and I'm managing someone who is a parent. It could be, I've never dealt with an elder care situation yet. My parents are younger or whatever. So they haven't lived it. So if there's a way to have the light bulb go on is kind of in a productive way. I wouldn't use the words I used. That was not appropriate, but it did get the message across. So
Provocative.
yeah. Leslie, did you have something you wanted to?
Just, yeah, the only thing I would add is, as I mentioned, is inviting them to your conversations, to your team, so they can see things. And I agree, getting a better relationship with some of them to understand perhaps what makes them feel that way. And data is always helpful. You know, the employee feedback scores, if you use that and you balance that with comments from your team and you present that, as Jamala said, in some, here's what I'm seeing data wise, here's what the team is telling me. And you know, these are some solutions that we would like to test or pilot. Like, if you put things out there as a test, a lot of times leaders will be like, yeah, okay, let's try it. But you have to come back and you have to say, this is what it resulted in the outcomes, and this is how I'd like to roll it out more broadly or share it with the broader team. Again, we can control what's in our space, but all these people we're affecting, and if we make the culture better for our teams, they are also going to affect the rest of the culture and anybody you touch, right? So you do have an impact in some small way if you can bridge what you can control in your world and not try to tackle like, oh, it's got to be these 3 leaders that I have no relationship with. Don't worry about that. Start with where you are. As Laura pointed out, you might be able to get something.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So we have 10 minutes left. I want to touch base on we've been providing solutions and support along the way, but there's a few questions specific on that. We have already dove in a little bit, but I want to see if there's a little bit more tidbits around how leaders can go beyond policies and creating cultures. We did touch on that, but are there any last additional thoughts on that from anybody? Naomi, Leslie,
Maybe
Jamal?
just to put exclamation point on what we were just talking about. And I think Jamala said it earlier on, like policies is one thing, right? We all need to continue to work on our policies. Our policies are not anywhere near perfect, and they're not probably ever going to be, and we're work in progress. It is the culture and it is the modeling that's important. So even in addition to policies, and I can't go against policy, but even in addition to policy, what are those little things that, Leslie, you said it beautifully on, those things that can be contagious, because they will be. The picture of the rock when you throw it in a puddle, right? You throw the rock in and the puddle reverberates outwards. It does make a difference. So I think just not being afraid that it doesn't have to be perfect, where Leslie started us. Don't worry about getting from here to here all the time, just little steps along the way to continue to encourage that conversation and then celebrate when people do it.
Yeah, I would hit on that celebration. Naomi, you're spot on, because even things like if you are doing all the right things with your team and you get manager feedback, or if you're not getting manager feedback, start asking for it. And again, collect data plus additional inputs from team equals something you can go to someone with. And if you're getting manager feedback and you can see the scores of your feedback is better than norm, these are the main reasons why. And celebrate. You need to talk about it, celebrate it, try to share best practices. It's not always about the problems. A lot of times it's about who's doing this right and how do we replicate that throughout the organization and really highlight those people that are doing well and creating good culture and that celebration. And I think one of the other things that I've learned is when you see it in whether it's another leader or manager and you praise them in front of others, people are going to start asking, well, what is it that they're doing? And why does she, think that that's so great? I don't want, Sally doesn't want Leslie to think that she's not doing it. So there's also ways there that you can really promote positivity in the workplace to celebrate what's going right with culture. What are those small things? And asking enough questions so that you have a relationship with your team to know that, or employees to know what they are doing well.
I love Naomi's language of a contagious culture. That
Yeah.
is something that I'm going to use in my organization. That I was just thinking back a little bit more as we think about, how do we really build that? And Jennifer's question, because I think one aspect of her question that was just interesting to the conversation we had at the beginning about the invisible labor of motherhood, was I was reading in there that there's also this labor of middle managers that you're talking about, where how you're messaging, how you're driving a message up of flexibility, but you're also receiving and hearing the needs of your team. And in some ways, there's a lot of parallels between the role that middle managers play and some of the invisible labor that we talked about of motherhood. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, but also just reinforce the power of that place in middle management, where you are seeing and feeling everything from the bottoms up, that grassroots reverberation of what people want and what they want to see from their company culture. And there's responsibility then to take it through the organization, which can be heavy, but is also just such a great opportunity for leadership and, you know, for your career progression as well too, if you can bring those things through the organization, going in both directions. So I just wanted to acknowledge that point that I just saw in Jennifer's question too.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. So we have 5 minutes left, and we're going to do a lightning round.
I'm feeling part 3, Laura.
Yeah.
Well, but if we're going to do part 3, let's have it live with a cup of coffee or a glass of wine in hand. Um, but I hear you. So one final piece of advice, we've talked about a lot of things, but if you one last nugget you want to get to help folks as they're balancing parenthood and working in the insurance industry and life in general. Leslie, I'll go to you first because you're the top of my screen.
Okay. My final piece of advice would be true to yourself. You're never going to make everyone happy, but be true to yourself. Keep learning and growing, but be yourself, and don't be afraid to, you know, be the uncomfortable one telling what's different in the organization. Be different, like as Jamala just pointed out, you know, you having the courage to speak up and share some of these things with upper management is important in the right way. Of course, ask a bunch of people, get your stuff together, but be true to yourself. And I think you'll find a way through many of these challenges. And yeah,
I love
be
that.
afraid.
Jamala,
Yeah,
one last piece of advice.
yes, I'll just kind of maybe go back to the business of insurance, and we're in the business of supporting people through life events. That's what our industry is all about. And what we just talked about is the life event of parenting, caregiving, caretaking. And I read a study from 2021, it was Blue Cross Blue Shield study, that the direct economic cost of caregiving to productivity is $44 billion. There's a solution that our industry should be leading with to support caregiving. That is our business, helping people through life events and transitions. What is the insurance solution, and how do we as women, as people who have firsthand experience in caregiving and parenting and balancing, rise to the occasion of solving this $44 billion opportunity?
Wow, that is quite a statistic and quite a challenge. How do we solve it? But so that's part 4, 5, and 6. So
Infinity.
yes. Naomi.
I would say something I've relearned in the last couple of years is no can be a complete sentence, and you'll be just fine.
That's awesome. Mine is put your own oxygen mask on first. There's a reason they do say that on the plane, because you can't help anybody else if you're not taking care of yourself. And I have to remind myself of that every day. So, wow. Thank you, everybody.
Fun.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate everyone who's on the call. Hopefully this was helpful. Kylie, if you could put the how to get in touch slide up. I know you're putting some information in there. Um, we just started, since the last session, a Women in Insurance initiative page on LinkedIn. So that's the best way to get instant information about what's going on. We have upcoming webinars. We have all kinds of campaigns around how to help us all in insurance. And we'd love you to be part of that community. We'll be doing our planning for 2026 over the next 6 weeks or so. So if you want to get involved or just stay in touch, please join us in any of these locations. And we hope to see you all soon. We learned a lot today. We talked about letting go of perfection, setting boundaries, flexibility. It takes a village, taking care of ourselves, role modeling, a lot. So hopefully it was helpful to you. I love these ladies. I can't wait to give you all a hug in person someday in my life. Let's make that happen soon. And everyone have a great Monday and good luck in the season of back to school. We'll see you all soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you.